My name is Hannah Ridley. I am 29 years old, and on the evening of October 17th, 2024, I stood near the entrance of Grand Ballroom A at the Raleigh Convention Center and watched my father open a 12-page program and find my photograph on the inside cover. He was wearing the dark suit he has owned for 8 years. I know because I have watched him wear it to every formal occasion since I was a teenager. He had it dry cleaned for this one. I noticed that detail when he walked through the lobby doors at 7:14 with my mother and their accountant, Patricia. And I noticed it the way I notice everything, quietly, without showing that I noticed, and with the specific patience of a woman who has been waiting 11 years for a room to do the explaining she never could. He read left to right. The first photograph was the CEO. The second was the COO. The third was a woman in a navy blazer looking directly at the camera with the expression of a person who has been photographed professionally enough times that she no longer thinks about the camera. Below the photograph, in clean sans serif type, were 2 lines: Hannah Ridley, Chief Financial Officer. He read the name. He read the title. He looked at the photograph. He looked at the photograph. He read the name again. What he did not know, what neither my parents had known for 14 months, or for the 4 years before that, or for the 11 years before that, was that the company whose program he was holding, whose event he was attending as a guest, whose ballroom he was standing in surrounded by 400 people in black tie, was a company I had helped build from the inside. What they did not know was that the per-head catering cost, the AV vendor, the floral contract, and the printing cost of the program in my father's hand were all line items I had approved. This is that story. My father's name is Gordon Ridley. He is 60 years old. He owns Ridley Tax and Accounting Services in Cary, North Carolina, a practice he has run for 27 years with 12 business clients and 47 personal clients, a silver Honda Accord, and a professional confidence that comes from having built something steady and lasting in a field that values exactly those qualities. He makes approximately $110,000 a year. He is not a vain man. He is not a cruel man. He is, in the specific way of people who are neither of those things, a man who made a decision about his daughter's life in August of 2013 and has been living in the version of that decision ever since, without ever pausing to examine whether the version he was living in was the true one. My mother is Miriam Ridley. She is 57. She has been the office manager of Ridley Tax and Accounting Services for 27 years, the person who keeps my father's professional life running, who manages client relationships, schedules appointments, handles administrative operations, and does it all with a warmth and an efficiency that I have always recognized as genuine, even when I was most frustrated with her. She has a Facebook page. She posts about Gordon's practice milestones, her book club, and her garden. In 11 years, she has never posted about my career. Not for malice. From the specific gap of a mother who does not know enough about what her daughter does to describe it in a post and has decided, without examining the decision, that the gap is my fault for being private rather than her own for not asking. We grew up in Cary, which is a suburb of Raleigh in that very specific way, where the suburb is orderly and the Raleigh you can see from it feels like a different country. 4-bedroom colonial on Thornberry Drive. Miriam's garden in the back, which she has maintained for 30 years with a discipline that I have always privately respected. Gordon's home office, which smelled of printer paper and the specific manila folder smell of a man who keeps physical files on every client in his practice. I grew up in that house doing 3 things: making good grades, eating dinner at 6:30, and making things. Drawings first, then digital design, then a portfolio that took me 3 years to build because I could not stop working on it and did not want to. The Savannah College of Art and Design acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday in March 2013. I was 18. I had applied on my own, using the school computer during lunch periods because our home computer was shared, and I was not ready to have the conversation the application would start. The letter was addressed to me. The scholarship notification came 2 days later. A partial merit award, $12,000 annually, one of 340 given to incoming students that year based on portfolio work. I read both letters in my car in the school parking lot. I sat there for 22 minutes before I drove home. I told my parents that evening. I put both letters on the kitchen table. I had rehearsed the conversation enough to know I wanted to lead with the scholarship. The concrete, financial, this is not a dream, it is a plan evidence. Gordon read both letters. He read them the way he reads everything, which is the way an accountant reads a financial statement, looking for the structure, the figures, the implications. He set them down. He looked at me. He said nothing for a long time. Then, at the kitchen table in August 2013, 3 months and one enrollment conversation later, he told me what was going to happen. He said, "Hannah, I'm going to be honest with you because that's what I owe you. Art school is a path for people who can afford to take risks. We cannot afford for you to take this risk. A graphic design degree from a school in Georgia is not going to pay your bills in 10 years. Accounting is a profession. It is stable, it is respected, and it is something I can teach you. I've already spoken to the admissions office at NC State. They have a spot for you in the business program. The first semester deposit has been paid." He slid the NC State enrollment confirmation across the table. He did not ask. He informed. Miriam put her hand on my arm immediately after. Her voice was warm with the specific warmth of a woman who had already agreed to the decision and was now managing the delivery. She said, "We want what's best for you, sweetheart. Your father knows this world. He built something real. He's trying to help you do the same." She squeezed my arm. I looked at the SCAD letter. I looked at the NC State confirmation. I picked up the NC State confirmation and said okay. I said it with the same face I use now when I approve a budget I do not love but can work with. Calm. Clear. Not the end of anything, just the beginning of a different plan. I kept the SCAD letter. I folded it back into its envelope, put it in a shoebox under my bed, and I kept it there for 4 years while I completed a business administration degree at NC State with a 3.9 GPA. I kept it in a desk drawer through 4 years at Callaway Regional Accounting in Raleigh. When I moved into my apartment in the Glenwood South neighborhood, I had it framed. I hung it above my desk next to my CPA certification and my CFO appointment letter. I put them in that order deliberately. The SCAD letter first, the CPA second, the CFO appointment last. I put the SCAD letter first because it was first. It was the first evidence that I had been recognized for something I chose myself, before anyone else's decision overruled mine. No one who has visited my apartment has ever asked about the order. I have never explained it. I graduated NC State in May 2017. I passed the CPA exam on my first attempt in November of that year, which fewer than half of first-time candidates do. At Christmas 2016, when I told my family I had passed, Gordon said, "Good, that's what you need. Foundation." Then he turned to my cousin Ryan and asked about his graduate school applications. My exam result was discussed for 11 seconds. I counted because I count things. It is, as it turns out, a quality that makes a person very good at finance. I joined Callaway Regional Accounting in January 2018 as a junior associate at $52,000 a year. I was promoted to associate in 2019 at $64,000. In 2020, I became the youngest senior associate in the firm's history at $78,000. At Easter 2019, a family friend asked my mother what I did. Miriam said, "She's in finance, in Raleigh, at a creative company," which is interesting. She said it with the specific intonation of a woman who finds something slightly difficult to explain and has decided the difficulty belongs to the subject rather than to herself. I passed the asparagus. I did not correct her. I noted it the way I note everything, carefully without reaction. In September 2021, Strand Creative Group's CFO saw my name on a Regional Accounting Excellence Award and called me directly. Strand Creative Group is the largest full-service creative agency in North Carolina, headquartered in Raleigh with satellite offices in Charlotte and Wilmington. 412 employees, clients in 31 states, annual revenue of $47 million. They were looking for a director of financial planning. The CFO who called me said he had read my award citation twice. I started at $96,000. That was the moment I stopped being the daughter who had been redirected and started becoming the woman who had found her way back. If you are still watching and this story is landing somewhere real for you, I want you to pause and drop a comment below. Tell me if you have ever built something quietly while someone who underestimated you was still speaking. Tell me what that felt like. And if this is your first time on this channel, subscribe now. Every week on Silently Winning, there is a new story exactly like this one, and I do not want you to miss what comes next. The years between September 2021 and October 2024 are the years my parents know nothing about. They know I work in finance. They know I am in Raleigh. They know it is at a creative company, which Miriam finds interesting. When they ask how work is, I say fine and move the conversation somewhere else, and have done so with such consistency for so many years that they have stopped asking follow-up questions, the way you stop reaching for a door handle that is never opened. I have not done this to be cruel. I have done it because there was a conversation at a kitchen table in August 2013 where my father paid my first semester deposit at a university I had not chosen and told me it was what I needed. And after that conversation, I decided that the life I built from that point forward was mine. Not a secret against them. Mine. The difference matters. In January 2022, 4 months after joining Strand, I began working directly with the agency's ownership group on a financial restructuring that standardized the billing practices across the Raleigh, Stephen, Charlotte, and Wilmington offices. Before the restructuring, the 3 offices were running separate billing systems that could not talk to each other and were producing reporting gaps that made it functionally impossible to present consolidated financial statements to potential clients or partners. By March 2022, after 11 weeks of work that regularly started at 6 in the morning and rarely ended before 8 at night, I had designed and implemented a unified accounting architecture that the agency's auditors later described in their annual review as the most significant operational improvement in Strand's 12-year history. The CFO who hired me put that sentence in writing. I kept the email. By June 2022, I was managing a financial operations team of 7 people, none of whom I had hired because the existing team was talented, and I saw no reason to replace people who were good at their work simply to assert that the new director had arrived. I am not a person who makes changes to prove I can. I make changes when I can show exactly what the change will produce. Gordon taught me that, in his way, without knowing he was teaching it to me. That fall, Strand's ownership group began talking privately about a potential acquisition, a mid-sized brand strategy firm in Charlotte that would expand the agency's service offering and increase annual revenue by an estimated $8 to $11 million. The acquisition discussions went on for 14 months. I ran the financial due diligence from Strand's side, which meant I was reading the Charlotte firm's books at a depth that let me see every structural risk before it became Strand's risk. In November 2022, 6 weeks before the acquisition was scheduled to close, I found a set of deferred revenue entries in the target firm's accounts that had been improperly classified for 3 consecutive years in a way that inflated their EBITDA by approximately $2.4 million. I presented the findings to Strand's CEO on a Tuesday afternoon. I had the summary prepared in a single page because the most important financial findings are always one page. He read it twice and asked me how I wanted to handle it. I told him. He said, "Do it." We renegotiated the acquisition price before close. The savings to Strand were larger than my annual salary. In January 2023, I was promoted to Vice President of Finance at $134,000. That Christmas, Gordon said at dinner that his daughter was in finance in Raleigh. A colleague of his asked, "What kind of finance?" He said creative industry accounting and corporate work, he thought. He turned the question back to the colleague within 30 seconds. I was eating roast beef 3 seats to his left. The difficulty came in March 2023. Not a crisis. A specific kind of fatigue that I have since learned to recognize as the cost of building something significant, while also managing the weight of the separate, private life you are carrying alongside it. A major client, Strand's 3rd largest account, representing approximately $4 million in annual billing, signaled they were considering moving a portion of their creative work to an in-house team. The loss of even half that account would have created a material impact on the agency's revenue projections and, more specifically, on the budget cycle I was in the middle of presenting to the ownership group for the following year. I spent 6 weeks in those conversations working with the account team, pulling together financial modeling that showed the client the comparative cost of in-house versus agency production in granular enough detail that it became a legitimate business case rather than a sales pitch. In the end, they kept the full account. But there were 2 weeks in March when I sat at my desk in my apartment on Glenwood South at 11 o'clock at night, with spreadsheets open on both monitors and the SCAD letter above me on the wall. And I thought, clearly, and without self-pity, this is the hardest thing I have ever done. And then I went back to the spreadsheets because the hardest thing you have ever done is still a thing you can do. In August 2023, the existing CFO announced his retirement. The ownership group asked if I wanted the role. I said yes. I started as CFO at $172,000 plus a performance bonus structure. The appointment letter was framed and hung on the wall above my desk on the last Saturday of August 2023, to the right of the CPA certificate, to the right of the SCAD letter. Third from the left, the order it earned. My personal accountant is a woman named Patricia Webb. She runs a boutique accounting firm in Raleigh, and she has handled my personal returns since 2019. In 2021, Gordon and Miriam were referred to Patricia by a mutual contact, and by 2022, she was handling both their personal returns and the Ridley tax practice accounts. Patricia mentioned the Ridley tax account to me in passing in late 2022, using the firm's name, and I recognized it immediately. I said nothing. I noted it. I filed it in the part of my mind where I keep things that will matter later. In September 2024, Patricia told me, in the course of a routine meeting about my Q3 tax position, that she was planning to invite Gordon and Miriam to the Strand Creative Group annual client appreciation event as her guests. She invited several of her clients each year, a standard hospitality gesture. She mentioned it because she thought I might find it interesting that she had clients with my surname. She did not know the full shape of what she was setting in motion. I said that was lovely. I went back to reviewing the event budget I had approved in July. The Strand Creative Group annual client appreciation evening is held every October at the Raleigh Convention Center. Black tie, 400 guests, round tables of 10, a stage at the front with a projection screen and a podium from which the CEO gives remarks. I had budgeted and approved the event for 3 consecutive years. I knew the per-head catering cost, $112. I knew the AV vendor we used and the rate we paid. I knew the floral contract, which we had renegotiated in 2023 for a 12% reduction, without any reduction in quality, because the florist wanted to keep the relationship and I gave them a 3-year agreement in exchange for the savings. I knew the printing cost of the 12-page program. I had reviewed the layout of the inside front cover in September when the design team submitted it for approval, a row of 7 leadership photographs, names and titles below each. The CEO and COO first, and third from the left, a woman in a navy blazer. My parents did not Google Strand Creative Group before the event. Gordon told Miriam it was a marketing company of some kind. Miriam said that sounded interesting. They bought new dress shoes and confirmed their attendance through Patricia and arrived at the Raleigh Convention Center on the evening of October 17, 2024 at 7:14. Which was 14 minutes after the doors opened and approximately 22 minutes before I had mentally estimated they would arrive based on my father's lifelong habit of arriving slightly ahead of schedule for events he considers important. I was standing near the entrance. I was wearing the navy blazer, the same one from the leadership photograph, because I was precise about that choice in the way I am precise about things that matter. I tracked the door because I had been tracking it since 7. I saw them come in with Patricia. I saw the staff member, a woman I had hired through our events vendor, hand them programs at the door. I watched my father take his program and follow Patricia into the lobby. I watched my mother read the room. The scale of it, the 400 guests, the production quality, the specific atmosphere of a company that knows how to present itself. I heard her say to Gordon, "This is quite something." I was close enough to hear it. I had positioned myself to be close enough to hear it. Gordon opened the program. I watched him open it. I watched him look down at the inside front cover. I watched him read left to right, the CEO, the COO, and then the third photograph. I watched his face. I have been studying my father's face across dinner tables and Christmas gatherings for 29 years. I know the face he makes when he arrives at an accurate assessment. It is not a loud face. It is the face of a man doing arithmetic, quiet, internal, the specific stillness of a calculation being completed. He read the name. He read the title. He looked at the photograph. He read the name again. Miriam turned from reading the room and saw his face. She said, "What?" He didn't answer. He turned the program toward her. She read the name. She read the title. She looked at the photograph for 3 full seconds. Then she said, "That's Hannah." Not a question. A fact landing. Patricia said, "Yes. Hannah is Strand's CFO. She's been here since 2021. Gordon said, "She's the CFO." Patricia said, "She has been for 14 months. Miriam said nothing for 11 seconds. I counted. Then I crossed the lobby. I did not hurry. I did not need to hurry. The moment had already happened. The program had done what I had known for 3 months it would do when it reached my father's hands. What remained now was simply the conversation that followed it, and I have been preparing for that conversation in some form since August 2013. I walked to where they were standing, and I said, "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Dad," warmly, the way I say things. Gordon looked at me. He looked at the program. He looked at me again. He is an accountant. He reads balance sheets for a living. He was reading the balance sheet of the last 11 years in the space between my face and the program in his hand, and the columns were not balancing in the way he had believed they would. He said, "You're the CFO." I said, "Yes, Dad." He said, "Of this company." I said, "For 14 months." He looked at the lobby again. 400 people. A stage with Strand's logo. A program with his daughter's photograph on the inside cover. A company with $47 million in annual revenue. He built a practice over 27 years that generates $110,000 a year. He told me at a kitchen table in 2013 that art was a risk we could not afford. She became the CFO of a company 42 times larger than anything he had ever built. He said nothing for 14 seconds. I counted those too. Then Miriam did something I did not expect. She put her arms around me. Not carefully, completely. The hug of a woman who has been waiting 11 years to understand what she missed, and has just understood it while standing in a lobby holding a program with her daughter's photograph inside it. She held on for 7 seconds. My arms came up after 3 seconds of surprise. I held on too. Over her shoulder, I could see Gordon still looking at the program, his jaw working, searching for a sentence with the specific effort of a man whose entire professional life is built on precision encountering for the first time a situation that precision cannot resolve. When Miriam stepped back, her eyes were bright. She said, "You never told us." I said, "You never asked, Mom." I said it gently. There was no accusation in it, only the quiet accuracy of a fact that had been true for 11 years and was being stated plainly for the first time. She looked at me for a moment, then she looked at the program, then she gestured at the ballroom beyond the lobby, the guests, the scale, the event, and said, "Show me the rest of it. Show me what you built." I looked at my father. Gordon folded the program carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. The specific gesture of a man preserving a document he intends to study later. He said, "Show us." I walked my parents through the grand ballroom of the Raleigh Convention Center, and I showed them what I had built. I showed them the catering stations and told them the per-head cost I had negotiated. I showed them the AV setup and mentioned the vendor relationship that had taken 2 years to develop into something reliable. I showed them the floral arrangements I had reviewed in September and the renegotiated contract that had saved the agency 12% without losing a single stem. I showed them the stage where our CEO would shortly give remarks that I had helped draft, and the projection screen currently running the Strand logo, and the seating arrangement for 400 guests that the events team had submitted to me for final sign-off 6 weeks ago. I showed them the shape of a company and the fingerprints of the person who had been managing its finances for 3 years. Gordon walked beside me and said very little, but he read everything. Every placard, every table name, every sponsor acknowledgement in the program he had taken back out of his pocket. He was doing what accountants do with a company they are encountering for the first time, reading the structure, the scale, the evidence of how it was built. He was finding my work in all of it. I could see him finding it. He did not say this out loud. Some reckonings are silent ones. At the end of the walkthrough, we were standing near the stage. The event was about to begin, and I needed to take my seat at the leadership table. I turned to my parents. Gordon said, "You did this." Not a question, not yet an apology. The statement of a man making an accurate assessment 11 years late. I said, "Yes, Dad." He said, "The SCAD letter." He said it without preamble, the way he says things when he has been thinking them for a while. "You kept it, didn't you?" Not a question either. He knew. I said, "I framed it." He closed his eyes for 1 second, opened them. He said, "I'm sorry, Hannah." 4 words. Direct. The way he says everything. She looked at her father, at the man who told me art was a risk they could not afford and who was standing in the lobby of a $47 million creative agency with my photograph folded in his jacket pocket, and I said, "I know, Dad." I squeezed his hand once. Then I went to take my seat. In the weeks that followed the event, my mother called 4 times. Not short calls, the long kind. The kind that cover ground you have not covered in years. She asked about my apartment. She asked about my team. She asked what a CFO actually does on an ordinary Tuesday, and I told her in more detail than she expected. And she listened to all of it. Gordon did not call. He sent an email which is more like him. 3 paragraphs, no subject line, arriving in my inbox at 6:43 on a Sunday morning, which is exactly when Gordon Ridley does his serious thinking. He said he had been reading about Strand Creative Group since the event. He said he had looked up the Regional Accounting Excellence Award I had won in 2021. He said he had understood for the first time what a CFO of a company at that revenue level actually does, and that he had read the description 3 times because he wanted to be accurate about it. In the last paragraph, he said, "You are very good at this. I should have told you that for years. I am telling you now." I read that paragraph standing at my kitchen counter at 7 in the morning with my coffee going cold. I read it twice. Then I saved the email in the same folder where I keep the letter from Strand's auditors about the billing restructuring and the email from the CEO after I found the Charlotte acquisition discrepancy. The folder is called Work I Am Proud Of. I put it there because it belongs there. It is, finally, work I am proud of, too. On a Saturday in mid-November, I cooked dinner for my parents in my apartment on Glenwood South. It was the first time either of them had visited. Gordon stood in the doorway of my home office for a long moment before dinner, looking at the wall above my desk, the 3 framed documents, the SCAD letter first, then the CPA certificate, then the CFO appointment letter. He stood there for a while without saying anything. Then he said, "You put the SCAD letter first." I said yes, he said, because it was first. I said yes. He nodded once, with the nod of a man who has done the arithmetic and arrived at the right answer and knows it is the right answer and does not need to announce it. We had dinner. Miriam brought a bottle of wine she had asked me about beforehand. She had texted me 2 days earlier to ask if I preferred red or white, which is perhaps the smallest possible detail, but which felt to me like the beginning of a different kind of attention. We ate and talked for 3 hours. Not about the event, not about the SCAD letter, not about August 2013. About Raleigh, and my team at Strand, and Gordon's clients, and Miriam's garden, and what was good. The conversation a family has when it is trying to find its way back to being one. I have thought a great deal since October about what my father actually did in 2013, and what he did not do, and what the difference is. He redirected me into accounting because he thought art was a risk. He was right that I became an accountant. He was wrong about what made me good at it. The eye for detail, the visual precision, the ability to see what a number means beyond what it says. Those came from the same place as the portfolio he declined on my behalf. He did not give me those things, he just gave them a different job. The excellence was always mine. The channel was his choice. He has spent 11 years confusing those two things. The program folded in his jacket pocket was the moment he stopped. I look at the wall above my desk sometimes when I am sitting there late at night working, and I think about the order of those three frames. The SCAD letter is still first. It will always be first. Not because I am still grieving the road not taken, I am not. The road I took led me somewhere I am proud of. I think about it because the letter is a record of who I was before someone else's decision became the condition of my life. A record that I was recognized for something I chose. That recognition belongs to me, not to the decision that came after it, not to the career that followed. To me, at 18, with a portfolio I built after school and on weekends because I could not stop making things and did not want to. If you are in a story like this one, if someone redirected your path a long time ago and has been taking credit ever since for where it led, I want to ask you something specific. When they finally saw what you had built, was the understanding enough? Not the apology, not the words, the understanding. The moment they stopped confusing their decision for your excellence, was that enough for you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.